Petals carried by wind. Chapter 1 Land of Frozen Dreams. In Tangang, Ansan County, North Hamgyong Province, where breath freezes before leaving your lips, I lived my first 17 years knowing only coal dust and mountain shadows. From Dundic Hill, I could see lights twinkling in Chinese Tumen across the river, mysterious beacons in a world where electricity was rationed and candles were precious. My family of 6 crowded into 2 rooms of a house with paper-thin walls. Father worked in coal mines, his hands permanently black, his cough worsening each year. Mother tended our rocky garden, coaxing turnips from soil that seemed determined to yield nothing. We competed for scraps of food and warmth from our single shared blanket. At school, teacher Kim taught us about the evil South Korean capitalists who drank blood and sold children's eyes to American imperialists. We believed every word. It was all we knew. The great leader Kim Il-sung provided everything. Our suffering was noble sacrifice for the revolution. Those lights across the river haunted my dreams. What kind of place could burn lights so freely? What did people there eat? Did they have warm beds? At 17, I received conscription papers for the Air Force. The morning I left, Mother pressed dried sweet potatoes into my hands, our most precious possessions, and wool socks knitted from unraveled yarn. Survive, she whispered. Come back to us. The Air Force Base felt like another planet. Concrete buildings, maintained grounds, and MiG fighters gleaming on the tarmac. For the first time, I had shoes that fit and clothes that were clean. Most remarkably, there was heat, consistent warmth throughout the night. But the food amazed me most. 3 meals daily with white rice, vegetables I hadn't seen in years, and on Sundays, actual meat. This is how the Air Force lives, Sergeant Park explained. You were the sword and shield of our revolutionary fatherland. I learned aircraft maintenance and discovered an aptitude for mechanical work. Within 6 months, I was assigned to maintain MiG-19 fighters. Each aircraft was polished religiously, checked and rechecked until perfect. Among the pilots was Captain Lee Eung-pyong, a legendary aviator whose skill was renowned throughout the Air Force. Unlike other pilots who joked loudly in the mess hall, he sat alone, staring at mountains beyond the base with intense curiosity. Sometimes, when I worked alone on his aircraft MiG-19 number 207, he would ask technical questions that went beyond standard briefings. How many maintenance hours per flight hour, he might ask, running his hand along the fuselage. Approximately 6 hours, Comrade Captain. He would nod thoughtfully, asking follow-ups that revealed deep understanding of aviation technology. These brief conversations planted seeds of thought in my mind. If our most decorated pilot had questions about military capabilities, what did that suggest about the larger picture we weren't allowed to see? Chapter 2 The Sky Torn Open. On September morning in 1983, Captain Lee Eung-pyong climbed into MiG-19 number 207 for what everyone believed would be routine training. Instead, he turned south, flew into South Korean airspace, and landed at Suwon Air Base requesting asylum. The news hit our base like a physical blow. Within hours, all aircraft were grounded. Pilots confined to quarters, and political officers arrived for loyalty verification procedures. The interrogation room was windowless concrete lit by a single bulb. 3 officers, a colonel, a major, and a secret police captain questioned me for hours about every interaction with the traitor. The traitor was gathering intelligence for his escape. The colonel concluded, "Your failure to recognize this shows serious lack of political awareness." Colonel Park's official explanation came that evening. Captain Lee Eung-pyong, corrupted by bourgeois ideology and enemy propaganda, has stolen valuable aircraft and fled to the puppet regime. But whispers began immediately. Why would someone with everything decorated pilot, good food, respect, beautiful wife choose South Korea if it was truly the hellscape of poverty? We'd been taught? The explanation that made sense came from an old sergeant. I heard he'd been asking about fuel consumption and range, and kitchen staff saw him at the coast last month, not visiting family in Pyongyang like he claimed. There was another rumor about instant ramen noodles. Captain Lee had supposedly obtained South Korean ramen, colorful, professional packaging with appetizing photographs. unlike our crude, twisted noodles. He saw that package and realized even their emergency food looked better than what we eat daily. Almost overnight after his defection, our food quality improved dramatically. Rice rations increased from 250 to 300 grams, meat appeared weekly. The leadership worried other pilots might follow Captain Lee's example. This generous response only reinforced questions his betrayal had planted. If better conditions could be provided quickly, why hadn't they been before? How many resources had been withheld while we were told hardship was necessary? During my 8-year service, these questions multiplied. I learned to nod during political education, repeat approved phrases about American imperialism, but privately, I constructed different understanding, based on evidence and logical implications of Captain Lee's desperate flight to freedom. Chapter 3: Homecoming of Broken Dreams. October 27, 1991. After 8 years military service, I returned home, clutching discharge papers and a small bag containing everything I owned. Nothing had changed, same unpaved streets, weathered buildings, propaganda posters. But I had changed, making familiar landscape feel foreign. Mother appeared in the doorway, older and thinner, but her smile remained warm. Father emerged, his miner's cough worse, hands shaking as he grasped my shoulders. My siblings, now adults with families, gathered around with careful restraint I hadn't seen before. The truth became clear when Mother prepared dinner. Instead of expected rice, the pot contained mostly dried fernbrake and corn flour livestock feed. We haven't had rice distribution for months, she explained gently. While I'd eaten 3 meals daily in heated barracks, my family had been slowly starving. The government, claiming equal provision for all, had created a system where soldiers ate well, while civilians scraped by on scraps. That night on Dundick Hill, Chinese Tumen had grown dramatically. New buildings, electric lights continuing through night, paved highways with moving vehicles suggesting prosperity. I could barely comprehend. Meanwhile, our side remained locked in grinding. Poverty actually deteriorated during my absence. Finding work proved impossible. My technical aircraft experience was useless in a local economy of coal mining and subsistence agriculture using 1950s technology. I was assigned to the coal processing plant where Father worked backbreaking, dangerous labor in poorly ventilated spaces, filled with choking dust. After 3 months, I'd lost 20 pounds. The psychological impact was worse than physical hardship. Military service had seemed meaningful, defending our socialist motherland. Civilian life revealed the hollowness. We weren't building workers' paradise. We were maintaining a system keeping ordinary workers in poverty, while privileged few enjoyed comfort in Pyongyang. The final straw came when I found Mother collapsed on the kitchen floor, exhausted from trying to prepare dinner from bark and grass. As I lifted her fragile frame, I felt her bones through paper-thin skin. This woman who had sacrificed everything for our welfare was wasting away because the system had abandoned her. I can't watch my family die slowly. While pretending this is the best of all possible worlds, I whispered to the darkness. The decision to escape grew from accumulated disappointments and unanswered questions, building since Captain Lee's defection. Every day watching parents struggle, every night going to bed hungry, while knowing better conditions existed across the river, pushed me toward the conclusion that I had to leave. Planning escape wasn't simply walking across a border. The Tumen River was heavily patrolled by guards, with shoot-to-kill orders. The government practiced collective punishment if caught. My family could face imprisonment, torture, or execution. The opportunity came in early spring 1992, when warm weather caused the river to swell with snowmelt. The increased flow made crossing both more dangerous and easier to do undetected. I chose a moonless March night, swimming toward Chinese lights and a future holding possibilities I couldn't imagine. The water was shockingly cold, knocking breath from my lungs and cramping my muscles. When my feet touched muddy Chinese bank, I lay there overwhelmed. I had crossed the line dividing my old life from whatever came next. Looking back across dark water toward my birthplace, I felt profound sadness. Somewhere in that darkness, my family slept unaware. Their oldest child had abandoned them forever. I had chosen freedom over loyalty, possibility over certainty. The river carrying me to freedom had also carried away any possibility of return. From now on, I would be a woman without a country. A refugee whose survival depended entirely on adapting to unpredictable circumstances. Chapter 4: Ghost in a Foreign Land. The first Chinese house I encountered was mud, bricks and timber with paper windows, and no electricity, yet felt luxurious compared to what I'd left. An elderly farmer named Chen found me shivering behind his woodshed the morning after my crossing. "Korean?" he asked in Mandarin. I nodded, too frightened to speak. He studied me, then gestured toward his house. "Come, eat that meal, rice porridge with vegetables in." Pork was the first adequate food I'd eaten in months. More significant was how casually it was offered, as if feeding hungry strangers was normal human decency. Chen let me sleep in his barn while I recovered strength. Through gestures and broken Korean Chinese pidgin, he explained I wasn't the first North Korean refugee he'd helped. "Dangerous to stay," he warned. "Police come, ask questions. Better you go to city." He gave directions to Jilin City, food for the journey, and used clothes to make me less conspicuous. As I prepared to leave, he pressed Chinese currency into my hand. "Be careful. China is better than North Korea, but still not easy for people like you." The walk to Jilin revealed countryside, impossibly prosperous compared to what I'd known. Farmhouses with tiled roofs and electricity, well-maintained roads busy with truck traffic, shops with actual customers, people wearing clothes that looked new rather than patched. Jilin City was a metropolis of over 1 million with modern buildings, busy streets, and the chaos of a place where human ambition was allowed to flourish. For someone from a village of a few hundred, the scale was overwhelming but liberating. The key to survival was discovering my Korean language. Skills were valuable. Northeastern China was home to millions of ethnic Koreans who maintained linguistic heritage while enjoying Chinese citizenship, serving as bridges between Chinese businesses and Korean companies. In cross-border trade, my first job was translator for a Chinese textile company, establishing relationships with North Korean factories. The work was sporadic and poorly paid, but provided enough for a small room and regular meals. More importantly, it gave insights into how business worked. In a market economy, the company owner, Wang, had built success through hard work, clever negotiations, and calculated risks. He treated employees fairly, reinvested profits in better equipment, maintained customer relationships by delivering quality on schedule. Business is like farming, Wang explained. You plant seeds, tend carefully, harvest results. But if you don't plant good seeds or tend properly, you get nothing. This was foreign to someone from a command economy, where success depended on political connections rather than performance. Working for Wang exposed me to international practices, and gave first glimpse of South Korean prosperity. North Korean factories we dealt with were primitive operations in crumbling buildings with outdated equipment and minimal quality control. South Korean companies operated with sophistication, almost impossible to comprehend. Their representatives arrived in expensive cars, wore tailored suits, negotiated with confidence, born of global market experience, and demanded quality standards North Korean factories struggled to meet. The South Koreans are serious people, Wang observed. They understand business. They keep promises. After 18 months in Jilin, I moved to Qingdao, a coastal city known for German colonial architecture, modern port facilities, and thriving manufacturing. I found work in a Korean restaurant, serving international business travelers. The owner, Mrs. Cho, was shrewd, recognizing Qingdao's growth would attract Korean companies seeking Chinese manufacturing partners. Her restaurant served as unofficial meeting place for cross-cultural business relationships. The job required regular interaction with South Koreans, and these encounters completed my political education. The businessmen were confident, well-dressed, prosperous in ways that made previous understanding of their country seem like cruel joke. One evening, a textile executive named Mr. Kim struck up conversation, noticing my accent. "You're not Chinese Korean. Your Korean is too pure, too formal. You learned in school, not from grandmother." Something about his manner made me want to tell the truth. "I'm from North Korea," I admitted quietly. His expression became serious but curious, not hostile. I told him about abundance I'd discovered in rural China, energy of Chinese cities. How ordinary people could improve lives through effort, rather than waiting for government permission. What you're describing: poverty, restrictions, hopelessness. That was South Korea 50 years ago, Mr. Kim said. My father grew up during the Korean War. They ate tree bark, burned furniture to stay warm, lived in American surplus materials. What changed? Everything. Government, economy, how people thought about work, and success and future. Once we started moving in right direction, each year was better than the last. He handed me a package of instant ramen noodles, the same product that had supposedly influenced Captain Lee's defection. Seeing it closely, examining sophisticated packaging and appetizing photography, I understood why such simple item might represent something larger. This wasn't just food. It symbolized an economy sophisticated enough to mass-produce convenience products, creative enough to make them appealing, prosperous enough that ordinary people could afford them regularly. In South Korea, you can buy this anywhere, 24 hours daily. 50 varieties, new ones introduced based on consumer preferences. I want to go there, I said suddenly, surprising myself with certainty. I want to see South Korea. Chapter 5: The Underground Railroad. Finding people who could help me reach South Korea proved both easier and more complicated than expected. China's cities harbored entire underground networks of smugglers, missionaries, activists, and citizens dedicated to helping North Korean refugees reach safety. Some were motivated by profit. Fees for guiding defectors could equal years of wages. Others by religious conviction, believing assisting refugees was Christian duty. Still others were moved by personal encounters with North Korean suffering. But the network also included criminals seeing refugee smuggling as profitable enterprise, corrupt officials demanding bribes, and informants who would betray refugees for money or political advantage. Mrs. Cho, my restaurant employer, introduced me to this world. After a year of employment, I know who you really are, she said quietly one evening after closing. I've known for months. I've met hundreds of North Koreans. They all have the same look, like deer hearing wolves, but unsure which direction danger comes from. She explained my Korean was too formal, too pure. Chinese Koreans mixed in Chinese words and casual grammar. And you jump every time someone mentions police. Do you want to spend life hiding in China, looking over your shoulder daily? Or take a chance on something better? She explained the Underground Railroad, networks of safe houses, guides, and transportation systems moving North Korean refugees through Southeast Asia to South Korea. The route typically involved overland travel to Vietnam or Laos, then contact with South Korean diplomatic facilities, arranging legal passage to Seoul. The journey could take weeks or months, cost equivalent to 3 years' wages, but Mrs. Cho offered to arrange credit with smuggling organizations. The decision became clear when I witnessed police raid on apartment complex where North Korean refugees lived, watching people I'd known for months dragged away in handcuffs, their faces showing blank despair. I saw both accusation and warning in their eyes. I contacted Mrs. Cho and said I was ready to begin the journey. The organization was run by ethnic Korean businessman Park, who operated legitimate businesses providing cover for smuggling activities. I do this because it's right, but also because it's profitable, Park explained. Don't forget your life depends on people risking their lives to help you. Respect that sacrifice, follow instructions exactly. I would travel with 3 other North Korean refugees, posing as Chinese tourists with forged passports and rehearsed cover stories. We would train from Qingdao to Guangzhou, bus to Vietnamese border, crossing at night with local guides. The night before departure, I climbed to my apartment roof and looked north toward invisible North Korean border. Somewhere in that darkness, my family slept, still struggling to survive. Thank you, I whispered to the wind, speaking to Captain Lee, my parents, Mrs. Cho, all whose courage had brought me to this moment. I won't waste what you've given me. Chapter 6: Through the Valley of Shadows. The train from Qingdao to Guangzhou revealed China's transportation scale and efficiency. The electric locomotive pulled 15 cars, with passengers traveling for diverse reasons: business, family visits, tourism, seeking opportunities. My 3 companions and I sat separately. To avoid suggesting we traveled together. Each carried stories similar to mine teacher, whose husband was arrested for listening to South Korean radio, military deserter. Fleeing harsh winter when food supplies failed, young woman who escaped with her mother, only to lose her to illness in China. We carried forged Chinese passports identifying us as ethnic Korean citizens, complete with official stamps and biographical details, memorized until they felt real. The documents cost thousands to produce, representing technology beyond ordinary criminals. The 18-hour journey crossed landscapes revealing China's enormous scale, industrial cities with forest-like smokestacks, agricultural regions with rice paddies stretching to horizon, endless mountain ranges. What impressed me most was casual normalcy. Hundreds moving freely across thousands of miles, pursuing individual goals without government permission. Food vendors walked through cars, passengers used mobile phones, children played, while parents read newspapers. It was freedom unimaginable in North Korea, where travel between provinces required official permits and unauthorized movement was serious crime. Guangzhou, with over 10 million inhabitants, was larger than entire North Korean provinces. Neon signs advertised global products, traffic flowed in rivers, somehow avoiding constant collision. Air buzzed with conversations in multiple languages. Our contact met us at McDonald's, another globalization revelation impossible to explain to my parents. We spent 2 days in small hotel, while she arranged transportation and documentation for Vietnam border crossing. The bus to Dongqing took 6 hours through mountains, reminding me of childhood landscapes. But Chinese mountainsides were dotted with prosperous villages, maintained roads, signs of development transforming once impoverished regions. At the border, officials processed our documents with efficient boredom. Our forged passports passed inspection without comment, and within an hour we stood on Vietnamese soil, registered as Chinese tourists. Planning 10 days exploring northern provinces, Vietnam embraced market reforms, transforming its economy at pace rivaling China's growth. Hanoi bustled with motorcycle-riding families, street vendors, selling everything from traditional pho to modern electronics, construction projects, reshaping the skyline monthly. Our tour visited standard attractions: Halong Bay's dramatic limestone formations, ancient Hanoi temples, bustling markets. But most impressive was evidence of ordinary people building better lives, freedom to move around their country, make choices about where to live and work, build futures based on personal effort rather than ideology. On our 4th day, while the tour group visited a silk factory, Vietnamese contact, Mr. Nguyen, approached during lunch. "Are you ready for the next part of your journey?" he asked quietly in English. The next morning, instead of joining the tour bus, I met Mr. Nguyen at a coffee shop. He led me through narrow streets to an office above a motorcycle repair shop, where 3 other North Korean refugees waited with nervous anticipation. "You are almost at journey's end," said the woman in charge. "In a few days, if everything goes according to plan, you will be in South Korea beginning new lives as free citizens." We would drive to Ho Chi Minh City, fly to Bangkok on legitimate tickets, contact South Korean embassy to request asylum, a legal process typically taking several weeks. Most important is telling the truth to South Korean officials. Don't embellish stories or make them more dramatic. They've heard every possible North Korean refugee variation and can tell when someone is lying. Chapter 7: The Gates of Paradise. Bangkok's Suvarnabhumi Airport was a cathedral of glass and steel, embodying everything I'd learned about the modern world. Travelers from dozens of countries moved with confident ease of people taking international mobility for granted. The immigration line moved slowly, giving too much time to think about everything that could go wrong. Flight attendants spoke Korean with accent that sounded both familiar and foreign. Served Korean food prepared with quality and presentation exceeding anything I'd known. Treated passengers with respect, suggesting customer service was priority rather than afterthought. As aircraft descended toward Incheon Airport, I pressed face against window. Watching lights of Seoul metropolitan area spread, like constellation fallen to earth. 10 million people lived below free citizens of democratic country, where Captain Lee Eung-pyong had found refuge, where I would now build new life. When wheels touched Korean soil, I whispered prayer of gratitude for everyone who had made this moment possible. Captain Lee, whose courage had planted seeds of doubt my parents, whose suffering had motivated my escape Mrs. Cho and all others who had risked everything to help. Stranger reach freedom. Airport arrival was overwhelming revelation. Incheon was more magnificent than Kim Il-sung's presidential palace. So clean I wondered if I should remove shoes. National Intelligence Service officers greeted us warmly. Welcome. You've worked hard to get here. We boarded bus for National Intelligence Service facility and riding through Seoul suburbs. I saw transformation North Korea could achieve under different system. Modern apartments with lights in every window. Roads filled with private cars, shops open late. Serving customers who could afford to buy what they wanted. At the facility, we received comprehensive health checkups, first proper medical care of my life. When I cried seeing the thoroughness and quality, medical staff explained they were checking for diseases and nutritional deficiencies, then gave chocolate and milk as routine courtesy. Will there be more difficult work like this? I asked through tears. No more, the intelligence officer replied. Those days are over. During 3 weeks of debriefing and orientation, I learned about South Korean society, practiced using modern technology, received Korean language instruction to overcome North Korean dialectical differences. Most importantly, I began psychological process of accepting that I was truly free. Chapter 8 New Roots in Promised Land. Hanawon, the resettlement center for North Korean defectors, was my final transition point between refugee life and South Korean citizenship. Located in Ansong, it provided 3 months of intensive education about everything from banking and healthcare to job searching and democratic political participation. My fellow residents were North Koreans from every walk of life, former factory workers, teachers, farmers, even some former party officials who had lost faith in the system. What united us was shared experience of having risked everything for freedom, and shared challenge of adapting to radically different society. The most difficult adjustment was psychological. After decades of being told exactly what to think and do, the freedom to make individual choices was initially paralyzing. What career should I pursue? Where should I live? How should I spend money I earned? These decisions, routine for South Korean citizens, required mental muscles I had never developed. But gradually, with help from Hanawon counselors and volunteer mentors, I began to embrace rather than fear these choices. I decided to settle in Cheongju, a mid-sized city in Chungcheongbuk-do province, known for its educational institutions and growing technology sector. The government provided a small apartment, my own space for the first time in life. It had hot and cold running water, reliable electricity, modern appliances, and most remarkably, a key that gave me complete control over who could enter. The simple act of locking my own door and knowing I was safe inside was daily reminder of how fundamentally my life had changed. Finding employment proved challenging initially. My technical skills from military service were outdated, and I lacked familiarity with modern workplace culture and technology. But South Korean society had developed support systems for North Korean resettlement, including job training programs and employers willing to give refugees opportunities to prove themselves. After several months of temporary work and training programs, I found stable employment with a small manufacturing company that produced components for automotive industry. The work was physically demanding but intellectually engaging, requiring precision and attention to detail that suited my temperament. More importantly, it provided steady income that allowed me to build financial independence for first time in my life. I opened bank account, established credit history, and began saving money for future goals, experiences that would have been impossible in North Korea's command economy. but my most life-changing decision came when I met a fellow North Korean defector named Kim, who had established small beekeeping operation in rural Gosan County. He explained that beekeeping was ideally suited to North Korean refugees because it required patience, attention to detail, and ability to work independently, qualities we had developed during our difficult journeys to freedom. Bees don't care about your political background, Kim explained with smile. They only care whether you take good care of them and their hives. The idea appealed to me immediately. Beekeeping would allow me to work outdoors in beautiful mountain setting, produce something beneficial to society, and build business that could grow over time. Through my own efforts, with government small business loan and extensive training from experienced beekeepers, I established my own operation in 2013, exactly 1 year after arriving in South Korea. My first season produced modest honey harvest, but it represented something much more significant, tangible proof that I could create value through individual initiative in free society. Over subsequent years, my beekeeping operation grew steadily. I learned about different honey varieties, seasonal management techniques, and marketing strategies that allowed me to sell directly to consumers who valued locally produced, high-quality products. But perhaps most importantly, beekeeping gave me sense of purpose and connection to larger community. My bees pollinated crops throughout region, contributing to agricultural productivity and environmental health. The honey they produced nourished families throughout Korea. I was no longer just surviving. I was contributing to society in meaningful way. 10 years after my arrival in South Korea, I operate thriving beekeeping business with dozens of hives producing premium acacia honey, prized by Korean consumers. I own my home, car, and modern equipment. That makes my work efficient and productive. More significantly, I have built network of relationships, fellow beekeepers who share technical knowledge, customers who appreciate my products, neighbors who have accepted me as contributing member of community. These connections, based on mutual benefit and respect rather than political ideology, represent everything I had hoped to find. When I first glimpsed those mysterious lights across the Tumen River, epilogue petals on the wind, on quiet spring mornings when I check my hives and watch bees begin their daily work of gathering nectar from acacia blossoms, I sometimes think about Captain Lee Eung-pyong, and wonder if he could have imagined how far his single act of courage would ripple through time and space. His decision to point MiG-19 No. 207 toward freedom planted seeds of doubt in young mechanic's mind, seeds that grew into questions about everything I had been taught to believe. Those questions sustained me through 8 years of military service, motivated my escape from North Korea, guided me through years of hiding in China, and ultimately brought me to South Korea, where I could build life based on individual merit rather than political connections. I learned several years ago that Captain Lee had died, his body worn down by stress and alcohol, as he struggled with guilt over the family he had left behind. I wish I could have met him, to tell him that his sacrifice had not been wasted, that it had inspired others to seek the freedom he had found. But in a way, he lives on in every North Korean who makes the dangerous journey to South Korea, in every refugee who builds new life in democratic society, in every person who chooses hope over despair when facing impossible circumstances. My own story is just one thread in tapestry, being woven by thousands of North Koreans who have followed the path blazed by Captain Lee and others like him. Each of us carries memories of the darkness we left behind, but we also carry dreams of the future we are building together. Sometimes I call my siblings in North Korea, through brokers who can arrange brief, coded conversations. I tell them I am well, that I think of them daily, that I hope someday they too will see the world beyond the mountains that enclosed our childhood. I cannot save them, not yet, and maybe not ever, but I can honor their sacrifice by making the most of the opportunities their suffering purchased for me. I can build successful business, contribute to Korean society, and perhaps inspire others who are still trapped in the darkness to believe that escape is possible. And every spring, when acacia trees bloom and my bees gather nectar that will become golden honey, I remember that even the smallest creatures can achieve remarkable things when they are free to follow their instincts and pursue their purpose. like petals carried by wind from one garden to another. We refugees have been scattered far from our roots by forces beyond our control. But wherever we land, we can take root in new soil, bloom in season, and contribute our small part to the beauty and productivity of the world. This is the lesson Captain Lee Eung-pyong taught me with his courage, that my parents taught me with their sacrifice, that South Korea taught me with its welcome freedom, is not just the absence of oppression, but the presence of opportunity to become everything you are capable of being. Today, as I tend my bees in the mountains of Gozan, I am living proof that even the longest journey begins with single step, that even the darkest night eventually gives way to dawn, and that courage to seek freedom no matter how dangerous the path is never wasted. The petals are still dancing on the wind, carrying seeds of hope to places where they are desperately needed, and I am grateful beyond words to have been chosen to carry one small seed. From the frozen darkness of my childhood to the golden light of my adopted homeland,